projects used to create this hack are the Mother's Garden #1, the Western Saloon #2, Shipyard #1, and Dad's Garage #1, and the fonts used was Shadow BT. For Hack of the Week number 53, we've taken some inspiration from this Dad's Garage sign, this vintage one that I found online. We have lots of these elements or elements that are pretty close to these that we can lay out in order to create something that looks very similar to this. So let's go ahead and bring up Aspire 8. This could also be laid out in VCarve Pro 8 or VCarve Desktop. The only thing that you can't do in VCarve Pro or VCarve Desktop is actually build shapes that look like the V-carving or simulate the V-carving. So what you need to do is do up your tooling, preview your tooling, and send an image of that off to get the same effect. So in Aspire and VCarve Pro and VCarve Desktop, you've got a new way to look at your layout, which is the use shadow shading, which we find quite great or really good if you plan on sending your image off or your layout off to be proofed by a customer or maybe to display on your website. So if you turn it off, you get this. It's a little dull looking, but it still looks pretty good. But as soon as you add in the shadow shading, everything pops right off. So we're going to do our breakdown leaving the shadow shade on, which you can do everything, all the layout, all your modeling with the shadow shade on if you'd like. It's totally up to you. Let's flip over to our modeling tab. So let's turn off all of our components and we're going to start building this up. So we started out with the round sign center dish #1. That's quite a handle, but anyway, that's from the Mother's Garden #1 project. We're going to merge into that the plaque #2 from the Shipyard #1. We're going to merge into that the star from the Western Saloon #2. We're going to merge into that the wrench, and then we've developed some shapes for our actual VCarve simulation. So that's how we do it. Let's just go ahead and bring up our properties for these, and that way if you want to rebuild this on your own you can. You'll see that this the plaque, the shape height is 0.15 and the base height is 0.35. And as long as you leave this up, you don't close it, then as you click through all of your different components, then it will update with you. One thing I did notice is that it still says millimeters there and not inches, but this is in inches. So we've got a star, and the star is a shape height of 0.3 and a base height of 0.1. We have the round sign. It's has a shape height of 0.3. It lays right on the 0 plane, and the wrench is 0.2 and 0.25. If when you're laying this out you find that things start to look a little bit odd, like if this wrench happens to be set to addition, then that's what you're going to get for a look. So you're going to want to right click on your wrench, go to combine mode and go to merge, or you can click right in the 3D view and just make it merged if you'd like, and that looks great. So let's do up some quick tooling for this. We're going to hide the rendered text, and we're going to go ahead and split the view so we can see both the 2D and the 3D at the same time. Let's start off with setting up our material. It's a 1/4 inch thick, of course, and we're going to make sure the datum's in the middle. Now, where the model or the layout is positioned in the material is important. The actual model, once I had it all scaled up, the layout is a 1/2 inch. So there's an extra 1/4 inch of our material that isn't going to be machined into, and I wanted that to be the backing. You may sometimes you want that to be at the top of your model so that you end up machining through all that and this actually sits on the bottom of your board. But in most cases, you're probably going to want to have your model at the top and the gap or the extra material, the extra 1/4 inch, be actually on the back, so it thickens up your layout and makes it maybe a little bit more robust. I'm going to click OK. Let's go ahead and create some roughing tooling. We're going to select the 1/4 inch end mill. We're going to use the model boundary. We're going to do a boundary offset, which means it's going to rough out a 1/4 inch from the edge of my model, which is great. We're going to leave 0.04 of an inch of material behind. That's the allowance that's going to be left, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to calculate that. Now the way I laid this out, I laid it out so the proud areas of the wrench are actually at the same height as the top of the plaque in the center. So it's really going to make the center of this garage sign really pop. Let's preview that. That looks pretty good. Let's close that down. Let's go ahead and do our finishing pass. We're going to use the 1/8 inch ball nose end mill. We're going to make sure we have a boundary. We're going to machine the model boundary. We're going to go out a 1/4 inch, and that all looks good. So let's calculate that. Aspire is going to work some magic here at the bottom. And I've already laid out all of my 2D vectors here because, of course, this is Aspire, and I had built that simulated V-carving. But if you're in VCarve Pro, this is when you're going to want to make sure that you have all these laid out already so that you can actually do your V-carving in a second. Let's preview that. That looks pretty good. And we're going to close that. Let's go ahead and do our V-carving. So we're going to select all of the stuff we'd like to have V-carved, all the vectors. Do our V-carving. We're going to go ahead and just use all the defaults. We're going to use the V-bit tool of 90 degrees. And we need to make sure that we project that onto our model. If we don't do this, then what's going to happen? In some places, it may just barely show up. In other cases, it's going to end up just machining in the air above your part. When you project it onto your model, it'll actually follow the contours, the shapes, the recesses, and the raised areas, and V-carve right into that. So let's just go ahead and calculate that. Let's preview that. Looks perfect. Now we're going to do a cutout pass. So we're going to use a profile cut. And what you're going to need to do is have an outline. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the outline that I have here just to show you how I created it. So I select all of the components that create the boundary of my part. So if I had the wrench happen to stick out a bit, I'd also select it. But in this case, we're just going to cut around the boundary of this circle. There's a create vector boundary from selected components. This is also in VCarve Pro and VCarve Desktop. And Aspire in this case will actually create a vector. We're going to go ahead and we're going to profile cut that. Now, this is kind of an interesting part of your tooling. What you're going to want to do is remember how far you've already machined down. So we've already machined down a 1/2 inch because we've done our finishing pass of our layout. So we're right down to the surface, or we're just at the surface of that 1/4 inch that we want to keep for our backing. And then we want to do our profile cut down a 1/4 inch from there. So when you add up these two numbers, they should equal the thickness of your material. It's important. We're going to use an end mill, a 1/4 inch end mill. And in most cases, you're going to want to add in some tabs. But in my case, I want to be able to double click on the extra material and actually get rid of it. So we're going to calculate that. We're going to preview that. And then what we can do is we can double click on this extra material. And there we have the actual previewed tooling for this new garage sign. And I would say it looks pretty close to what we were hoping to have from our actual layout.